because he knows Miles thinks Merlot is tantamount to wine Philistinism, because that's what I thought at the time. And if they want to, drink Merlot, we're drinking Merlot. What really Miles is he's reproachful. He's disapproving of what Jack is trying to do here, which is to cheat on his fiancée. Right. And so instead of saying, you know what, I'm not really feeling this tonight, Jack, or whatever, he just stays with the question. No, if anyone orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I'm not drinking a Merlot. And the tirade, beautifully delivered by Paul Giamatti, the anger over a grape.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Cork and Journey. And man, are we lucky today. We have the one, the only, Mr. Rex Pickett, the author of the novel Sideways, with us. And we are going to be doing a blind tasting of Merlot. Merlot.
Okay,
Yes.
You didn't tell me that.
Well, I know. I just try to sneak that in there on you. We're hoping there'll be some sort of conversion. Maybe not. I'm not sure I really care. But I think we'll have a good time.
I think it's unlikely I'm going to become a Pinot Noir apostate, but I might. You never know.
You never know. But before we do this, we've got a crazy thing that Rex is so nice to do for us. So Tina and I have acquired a poster a long time ago of Sideways, the original poster, signed by everybody in the cast and the director, Alexander Payne, missing all but one important signature, Rex's. So we've got it over here. So before we get going, we're going to have Rex give us a signature on this. And away we go.
And you know what's so important? I actually don't have this poster. There's Alexander Payne, the director, who was the only one who wanted to do my novel. And Virginia Madsen and Paul Giamatti, Thomas Hayden Church and Sandra Oh, who was married to Alexander Payne at the time, whatever. But Sideways is a very personal, autobiographical novel. And a lot of people forget this guy down here, Rex Pickett, actually not only discovered the universe of the San Ynez Valley, I created the universe. No one even knew about this place, So I not to get into any braggadocio, but honestly, I feel like I've been lost in the mix. So with your help and with my website help and with Blackstone Publishing coming out with all my novels, because there's 3 sequels, I feel like I'm reclaiming my intellectual property.
You are my friend.
Okay, so I am proud to sign. I'm going to sign it above Sideways.
As you should.
Even though Alexander Payne, I got to give him a huge credit because he's the only one who wanted to do this film. I have so many rejection letters from the publishing industry and rejections from Hollywood too. Nobody wanted this, and it took him a year before he read it after it was submitted to him, by the way. So it's a lucky story that this exists, and here we are 20 years later.
I was going to say 20 years celebration.
And and here we are at the Vintners Collective in downtown Napa. I live in downtown Napa. It's one of my favorite places, multi-winery tasting room, and I sell my books in here, and the brand recognition's off the charts. It's like 95%. I mean, it's incredible. So anyway, here we go. It's not a great signature, but it is Rex Pickett.
That's it. Should it be Rex Pickett's? We just, Sideways?
There you go, yeah. Now, let's not, let's maintain some humility.
Anyway, it's fantastic. And you mentioned that, by the way. So big shout out to the Vintners Collective, downtown Napa. Rex was able to secure us, this whole beautiful upstairs area. They have 18 different vintners that have their wines here.
And they're very small producers, and it's high end, but it's a cool old stone building. We're upstairs. Downstairs is a bar that's just gorgeous. It's my favorite. Honestly, and I don't work for them. I don't get any fee or anything like that, but it's my favorite tasting room in all the world. And I've been all over the world, and because mostly when you go to a winery, you're just tasting one winery's wines.
Right.
Here you can taste many wines from over 15 wineries, and everyone here is so knowledgeable. Yeah. Anyway,
it's nice too, because Napa's getting kind of restrictive in these small little, even if they do have, their own little, they can't go to it, right? They're saying, no, sorry, you can't do tastings
Well, wine tasting has changed, in the movie, Miles and Jack, they go driving and they stop and taste a place and then they drive another 10 miles. That's changed down there. Solvang now has 25 tasting rooms. People just go there, park, and they don't leave. Right. And downtown Napa is becoming a little bit like that. There's about 50 tasting rooms here, but this is a unique one because it's a multi-winery tasting room, and the people have such incredible taste in wine. I've discovered some insane wines here. I don't know about this.
Well, we're going to see. We have some interesting ones. So we're just going to, as we go through the interview, we're just going to, there's 5 wines. We're going to rate them just on a scale of this from 1 to 5. So this is my favorite. This is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. We'll tally it up at the end. We'll see if any of them, you might give them all 0s though. So I give them all 1s, none of my favorites. We'll know. But, kind of getting into it. So Rex, I know that, in the writing of Sideways, it's been kind of a long journey for you, but I think a lot of people aren't aware that there is Sideways, which the movie is based on, and then you also have 3 additional novels, correct? That were part of that?
Yeah, and I'm the first draft of the 4th one, or actually the 5th one, is already been written, so you're keeping me from that today, but that's okay. I'm happy to join you. No, so there's Sideways, Oregon, and that's a totally different. Miles is me. It's autobiographical. I write in first person from the point of view of Miles. So Paul Giamatti, Miles is my alter ego. So wherever I go, they go. And then I was offered, so the second one is a big 4,000-mile road trip, starting from San Diego, going to Oregon, through all the way to Wisconsin, called Sideways, Oregon. And then there's the country of Chile invited me, Wines of Chile and Pro Chile, to bring my characters there, and then most recently Sideways, New Zealand. So, wherever I go, they go. But I have to find a story. It's not just I go wine tasting. That isn't how it works.
So let's start with number 1.
Oh.
We're going to jump right in.
Just jump right in.
Jump right in.
Tina's thirsty.
We could go through that. Well, actually, you kind of got to go through all of them as you're doing it. So I think just as we go through, right, to get your kind of go through and get your notes on these. While we're doing that, can you give us an inkling as to what's going on in Book 5?
Well, actually, Book 5, I was going to do another country. I'm not going to name it, and they just didn't have the infrastructure there when I got there that they had promised. I said I just flew home, and then I had an even better idea. Miles is going to the 20-year anniversary of this fictional movie, not called Sideways, called something else, because in Book 2, he's now a famous author in Sideways, Oregon. He's a famous author. Right. So I've established that. That's how close these books are to me. And he's going there, but the woman he's been seeing up in Napa has dumped him, and she's got a replacement to give him a ride down there. And he starts off pretty kind of depressed, if you want to know the truth. And then he meets her here at the Vintners Collective. This is a major location. And then the two of them they've never met, and they go on a road journey. And so it's really not Miles and Jack. It's Miles and a woman.
No Jack.
No Jack. Jack's in Sideways, New Zealand, but I feel like I've played him out. I meet so many people here, and I always ask them, what do you love about the movie? And almost no one, Jack is great, Thomas Hayden Church is fantastic, and you have that wonderful opposites attract, the 2 sides of the male coin. But I feel like I've played it out, and they really talk about Miles. It's really Miles' journey, my journey, I guess, in a way. So I want to bring a woman in and bring in possibility of romance. I will admit, commercially, women read 95% of all fiction. So if I throw a woman character in, maybe maybe I'll have I can't tell you what happens. Some funny stuff happens, but hopefully there'll be a sequel. I keep getting asked that question. We can talk about that later. Should we dive into the first one?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Let's dive in here. See what we got.
Can I ask you where you got these ones?
Yeah, so I'll give you a hint. Okay. So we'll kind of go through them. So we actually have, what do we got here?
We have a Texas, a Napa, 2 Napas.
2 Napas.
Wow.
One from what?
Temecula.
Oh, that's right, Temecula.
Very close to where I grew up. I've gone wine tasting there before.
And then we have a surprise one.
And we got there's a Bordeaux.
Okay.
There's a Bordeaux in there as well.
Oh, wow. I hope it's an 82 Petrus.
No, of course it is.
Yeah,
of course
right,
it is.
Exactly. Well, that's interesting.
So the funny thing is, we always are traveling around. I love, one of the great things about your books is that you're taking people to different wine regions, right? Now, you haven't even done Napa yet. which is, you're right. You're taking people all these different wine regions. And so we're lucky at Cork and Journey. We get to travel around. We get to go visit all these great places. So, it's funny. We just did a road trip of New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona. So, they're developing regions, right? Mm-hmm. And so things are happening. You don't know. It's going to, but occasionally you come across this gem where you've got this amazing winemaker who's doing some stuff. I would say the Texas wine, it's a French guy, came over here for a woman, right? And moved and said, well, I'm going to make wines, and found his little vineyards and grew them, and he's doing some really interesting stuff.
Well, what's interesting about Texas is I was hired to write a screenplay, actually by my ex-wife, and it's a road journey. It starts in LA and goes to Texas. And I, using a publicist, the major wine critic for the Austin Chronicle there, and I'm blanking on his name, and he had this incredible place out in the Low Country, and he had a tasting of 40 Texas wines. I was surprised at the quality of those wines.
Some of them are just...
Some of them.
And they're just getting better and better.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, we've been going to Temecula because we're, like you, we're South Orange County. It's where we started, right? So just right there, you could go there, and it's rough. It was rough. Very,
Can I give you a little
it's getting
parenthetical about Temecula?
Yeah.
So Temecula, for those who don't know, it's just a little bit northeast of San Diego. It's inland. The waters are warmer than they are here. They're cold, so grapes like cold. They like that temperature variance. You don't have it there as much. It can get hot inland. But I was wine tasting there a number of years ago, and they said that they were the #2 tourist destination in all of Southern California, next to Disneyland.
Wow.
I said, really, why? I said, because of your movie. In other words, if you're in Orange County and you want to go to the San Ynez Valley, it's an overnight, you got to get a hotel, whatever, it's a long drive. But if you just want to have a whim,
boom,
and you're not really into really exploring necessarily complicated, sophisticated, interesting wines, no offense to Temecula, and just want to go wine tasting and have that experience, within an hour you're there.
Right.
And not just Temecula, nearby Ramona, Escondido, there's wineries there. There's a guy in Ramona makes a Syrah. He died just recently, it's sad. He kept it in barrel for 5 years, and it was extraordinary.
Interesting.
This is where?
Years.
In Ramona. So Ramona's a little town outside of Temecula,
Right.
Escondido, so they're all kind of in that area
That
there.
might be Carter Estates. That's what they're kind of doing. They're like barreling stuff 5 years because they're trying. It's just the grapes. They're working with inferior fruit.
That's
Right.
yeah. The soils aren't great, and like
Right.
I said, the ocean water is not as cold as it is here off of San Francisco. And you want, like here in Napa the other night, there was a 45-degree temperature variance. So that heat brings the fruit, brings the sugars, but that night air brings the acidity, which is like my novels. It has the fruit, the humor, but it has Miles's despair and whatever.
agony.
And you, if you had just despair, you would have astringency, and you would have something probably unpalatable. But if you just had fruit, like let's say you tried to grow grapes in Palm Springs or something, you would have pear juice, and it would have no complexity. So it's those opposites, and that's why, especially Pinot Noir, loves, but even Merlot too. I did a tasting at Mort's, and I hope that's one of the wines here, and I did an event there, and they're way over in Sonoma, and there's some, they make totally Merlot and Zinfandel, and they were pretty darn good.
Yeah. There are other regions, and that's the thing you explore. Chile, great wines. New Zealand, great wines, right? Oregon, great wines. I mean,
Oregon is 85% Pinot Noir in Willamette Valley. They love me up there. They love me up there.
go to McMinnville, and you were talking about tasting rooms. McMinnville now has, I don't know, how many were we last there on 3rd Street?
Well, right after COVID.
It was like 15 tasting rooms.
I think a little more than that.
And again, and Solvang blows me away because it was just a kitschy little Danish town, whatever. It has 25 tasting rooms, and I'm not going to get into the real reason why, but the main reason is people they don't want to go and just drive around, taste, then drive around, get in their, just give me my hotel, give me my restaurant, give me my tasting rooms, and don't make me, just let me walk.
And it's probably safer.
Well, it is. I mean, a lot of people have designated drivers and stuff, but.
So you were just talking about how Miles is based off of you, right? How about all the other characters in the book? Are they based off of real life people?
Yeah, I mean, so I was going up to the San Ynez Valley to play golf. you know, the truth. I'd found a great golf course. I was, you know, trying to get out of my head. My life was in a bad place, you know, divorce and, you know, other stuff we talked about the other day. I don't want to depress your viewers here, but I was in a really bad place. I was nowhere. And I found a golf course called La Purissima. It means the pure one. There was nobody on it. It's long, it's hard, and it was uncrowded. And then I discovered the wine regions, and I started bringing friends up. Because it's 50 miles north of Santa Barbara, so when people went north of LA and wanted to get out of the city, they pretty much stopped in Santa Barbara. They didn't continue on. I did. I continued on another 50 miles. It was really an RV crowd. In fact, still it's kind of low-key in many ways until you get out of the car. And once I went up with a friend of mine, Roy Gittins, who was an electrician on my second feature film that I directed, and he's kind of a larger-than-life guy like Jack and whatever. Maybe not quite as, you know, amoral, but he's not that guy. And we just went wine tasting and golfing and cracked him up, and, you know, and he just was laughing. And he said, Rex, you should write a screenplay, you know, about this. And so I did. I wrote a screenplay, and it didn't work. But I was also going to wine tastings in Santa Monica, where I lived, because it was my only social outlet. And I got to know the owner's main salesperson. It was just the two of them, really. And he was very liberal with the pouring once the owner left. He didn't like he thought he was underpaid. So
which is in the first book.
Yeah.
And the guy who brings his own glasses. I mean, there's just such beautiful little vignettes in that book.
So to answer your question, Jack is based on Roy, but he's an amalgamation of him and maybe one other person in my life, but largely him. I mean, his what you look for when you're writing, because I write, as you point out yesterday, very screenplay-driven stuff, is you try to look for dialogue that differentiates characters. Bad screenplays and bad novels, everybody talks the same. But Roy, Jack, as kind of a different way. Hey, Holmes, you know, whatever, and Miles is kind of more intellectual. And what you really look for are opposites, because opposites equals conflict. Conflict is the foundation of all novels and great movies. Whatever is conflict, and conflict equals drama, equals humor, equals resolution.
Right.
And I don't think about it. It comes natural to me after all these years. But I was writing a short story. The screenplay didn't work, and it was written in first person from the point of view of Miles Raymond, Paul Giamatti in the movie, my alter ego, and it's at the wine tasting, as you say, up at Epicurus, long since gone, and degenerates into a brawl because Miles hates these elitist snobs there, and I thought, oh my God, I stood up from my desk and I said, this is the prologue to Two Guys on Wine, which was the title of the screenplay, and it will be a novel, not a screenplay. And I wrote it 9 weeks. Wow. So yes, Jack was based on Roy. Maya was based on a woman who worked at the hitching post, but I didn't have any romantic affair with her. But I would go up to the hitching post, which is famous now, and there'd be nobody in there. And after, she'd come over and light a cigarette at the bar, which is kind of funny to see it because it'd be illegal today. But, and we would, we'd get down and she'd drink wine. So I romanticized that character.
Okay.
And, those three characters are pretty much, and they're the central characters. Even the boar hunter, which is in the play and in the book, but not in the movie.
Right.
I met that guy at the bar, but I didn't go out with him at midnight while he shot a wild boar because he was totally drunk. So I draw, to answer your question, Tina, honestly, I draw as much from real life. If you can take real characters, actually, I can give this away in Sideways 20, the woman who goes on the road trip with Miles is based on my partner. I mean, she's an incredible person, has this unusual, interesting job that has a lot of drama in it, and she's funny as hell. You've met her, of course, on Zoom, and so I think the more you draw from, in my opinion, they say write what you know or whatever, but the more I draw from real life, the more comfortable I am as a writer. Right. So, I mean, when they're getting to know each other here at the Vintners Collective, I know the people who work there. I know what it looks like, right. And I can use that because sometimes that will open a door to using stuff. So yes, as much as possible, I draw on real characters. But the main real character is me. I'm the one, I'm, bearing my soul. Okay. Yeah. I was too much of an answer.
No, it's great. Let's move on to number 2, and while we're doing that, we can talk about.
Did you want to talk about number 1, or you just wanted to wait?
You want to talk about it? What are your thoughts on that?
I just wrote one word: bland. Sorry.
That's your opinion.
Yeah.
Everybody has
No,
different
that's
palates,
and that's what's
we
wonderful
all,
about wine.
That's what it is.
Yes.
It's so
It's-
subjective. You know, it really is. And, you know, the fact that I'm a Pinot person, I'm not a Bordeaux person, I mean, that's my palate. And I can explain it, but I'm not trying to tell people they shouldn't be drinking Cabernets or Merlots or whatever.
Right.
You know, so I'm not saying that because I wrote this famous line that's the number one thing I have to write on books, you know, no Effin Merlot. But I have to admit, I do love Pinot because it has such a greater expression. But there are Merlots who can't. It was fruity. It wasn't bad. It wasn't tannic. You know, Cabernet can be so tannic because it's meant to be laid down. Yeah. The tannins are what hold that wine up. But it's drunk young, and so it just feels just masculine and powerful and feral in my mouth. In fact, Merlot is blended into Cabernet to actually take some of that tannin down, to soften that wine. By law in Bordeaux, it must be 15% Merlot. But when it's 100% Merlot, it gets pretty fruity and can go to the...
I think it's interesting. I mean, we just did an interview with Steve Mathiasen, and he was talking about his epiphany wine, and it was three-dimensional, right? And he goes, that was the thing. It was just three-dimensional. This is two-dimensional, I think. I would kind of agree with you a little bit. It's good, though. I think it's very good.
Yeah, I mean...
You know, on the good, very good, outstanding scale, it's good.
But it's, you know, I'm not taking a hot air balloon ride. Now, let's bring up something else here quickly. You know, I bring price expectation to glass.
Yeah.
So if you told me that was, you know, a $100 bottle, I'd say, well, frankly, that's a ripoff.
Right.
But if you said it's only $10 a bottle, if it doesn't taste like lighter fluid, I figure that's a pretty good deal. So, you know, seriously, you have to bring price to wine.
Correct.
That's for
So,
sure.
I mean, there's some $120 Pinots down there that deserve it. And then there's a $130 Sauvignon Blanc that is extraordinary, but I wouldn't pay that for a Sauvignon.
And that's kind of why it's really good to taste blind like this sometimes, because you can go, okay, there's value there, right? There's extreme value in that wine.
But you know that they've done these experiments where they've done blind tastings and they've told the people this is a $10 bottle of wine, and they automatically, they're neurochemically, they have come to the conclusion it can't be very good, and they say it's a $100 bottle. They go, wow, that's interesting, or whatever, and then they tell them no, that it's really reversed. They've done that experiment many times.
I believe it. So as we're looking at number 2 here, I want to bring up. I got sidetracked from my question, Rex. As we're bringing up, no, I was drinking this as we're doing number 2 here. So I know the answer to this, but I think I found it absolutely fascinating the first time you told Tina and I. The whole Merlot thing in the movie is not necessarily, you know, that he hates Merlot. There's a whole background to that, and that part of the movie and why it's in the movie. I'm kind of curious if you'd love to tell our audience about it.
Well, obviously when I wrote the novel, I had no idea it was going to even be published, let alone be a movie, let alone that line would be in the movie. Remember, I didn't do the adaptation, although every draft of the screenplay was sent to me. I did not do the adaptation. Alexander Payne did it. So when people say, do you really hate Merlot? I say, well, hold on a second. You know, in 1991, the famous news magazine, which is still on, 60 Minutes, it's been on for over 50 years, my God. They did a thing on the French paradox.
Yep.
Maybe some of you have heard of that, and it was totally anecdotal. Some French winemaker said, we don't get heart disease here because we drink red wine. But 60 Minutes did it as if it was science-based, data-based. It's long been since disproved.
I believe it is. I'm sticking with that. Okay.
But Americans, and that's another subject because there's a new whole thing about alcohol and stuff like that. I don't want to get into that right now. And so Americans particularly are always looking for the fountain of youth. In the 1980s, it was vitamin E. They were popping so much vitamin E. It was a $1 billion business. And a 10-year study showed it didn't hurt you and it didn't help you. The antioxidants in it. So now it was red wine. Because in 1991, 60 Minutes did the thing about, you know, you are going to stave off heart disease if you drink red wine. So masses, seriously, flooded to the liquor store. Give me red wine. I want to live forever, you know. And they were probably driven to Cabernet Sauvignon. That probably was the only red wine in there, maybe Zinfandels or whatever. And Cabernet, to a neophyte palate, would have been very astringent because of the tannins in it, and we can talk about that later. So they said, well, I didn't like that, but I want to drink red wine because I want to live forever. I want my arteries to be.
Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill was available. I don't.
Well, or you could drink Concord grapes, whatever.
Yeah.
So they gravitated to Merlot, which is a fruitier grape. It's more approachable. It's mostly a blending grape in Bordeaux. Not always, as you know. Petrus is a premier Grand Cru. I mean, good God. I mean, an 82 Petrus would probably set you back 25,000 if you could prove the provenance on it. But they gravitated to Merlot, and Merlot is a grape that can be grown. It can be mechanized farmed, which Pinot can't be really. And thus was born a $5 plunk, through the 90s. And became 25% of the red wine market in the United States. So I was going to these wine tastings we were talking about up at Epicurus, and Merlot was and I was just learning, and there was a bunch of snobs in there, rich doctors and lawyers and stuff, and I'm sitting there and I'm just learning. If you liked Merlot, it was tantamount to wine Philistinism, that you know nothing about wine, you're an idiot. So I clocked that. I'm a writer, like I said, we're like thieves, we're always working. If we go to the movie now, and I'm writing the scene, bear in mind what's happening here. It's a double date that Jack wants to go well. And he's coaching Miles, who he knows can be a loose cannon. And if they order Merlot, because he knows Miles thinks Merlot is tantamount to wine Philistinism, because that's what I thought at the time. And if they want to, drink Merlot, we're drinking Merlot. What really Miles is he's reproachful. He's disapproving of what Jack is trying to do here, which is to cheat on his fiancée.
Right.
And so instead of saying, you know what, I'm not really feeling this tonight, Jack, or whatever, he just stays with the question. No, if anyone orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I'm not drinking a Merlot. And the tirade, beautifully delivered by Paul Giamatti, the anger over a grape, it's so outrageous and unique. And I got to give myself some credit. Miles drinking from the spit bucket. When you think of comedy, you just, but it comes at a moment when he is really frustrated with his life, and just drinking from the spit bucket just makes sense to him, or
Right.
I'm not drinking, in other words, I'm going to be a loose cannon tonight, and your night may not go as you hope it to go, so don't tell me what to do. And Merlot just got in the way. And so that's the long version of the story, but you just heard it here. I think it's the longest version I've told it. So that's what Merlot had become.
And
then
you
when
didn't
people saw the-
intend to put a lot of small little winemakers out of business, right?
Well, no, actually, the truth of the matter is, and there have been articles about this. Dan Berger, a very well-known wine critic up here in Northern California, wrote about how the small players, the $5 plunk people, they left because now it was embarrassing to show up at a party with a bottle of Merlot. Okay, so and the ones who were really doing it well, like Moritzen or like Pride up in Howell Mountain or whatever, actually it made their wine, because people still liked Merlot, but now they were drinking the really good stuff, not the cheap plunk. Correct. If you went into a restaurant, for instance, back in the early 90s, and they said, would you like something, a glass of wine or something, they would say red or white.
Right.
And if it was red, it was Merlot. And they'd pour you something really cheap, because again, it could be mechanized, farmed, it could be made very crudely, but it can also be made very professionally, and it can be made with a lot of care and a lot of love, like Petrus.
Correct.
Or Cheval Blanc. We can talk about that later too, which is mostly Cab Franc, but it's a lot of Merlot in there too.
Right.
So there are really great Merlots in the world, but in the movie, it just got in the way of Miles disapproving of his friend and what he's about to do.
Right. So what do we think of number 2?
Denser, richer, slightly more complex to me. I'm gonna try it again. I may have a totally different opinion.
I have a theory about this one, but I got to go through the other 3 before I can play it out. I'm thinking France on this one, since we've got 1 in there.
So here's the
But
case.
I might be totally wrong.
Here's the case where we are getting more tannic structure.
Yes.
I could be wrong on this. Look, I'm not a wine critic. I'm not a sommelier. I'm almost feeling there's a little more age on the wine. It's possible, like it might be a 2018 or something like that. I don't know. It's vastly superior to number 1, for sure.
Vastly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hot night and day. It really is.
Yeah, no, it is.
It really is.
No, I've already forgotten the first one. No, I actually really like that wine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That could be an epiphany in book 5.
Yeah.
You never know.
Well, I don't know. There's a famous winemaker up here. He says, Rex, don't you think it's time to take down Cabernet Sauvignon? I said, I don't want to go there.
That would be.
Although in Sideways New Zealand, Miles says, no, if anyone orders Kim Crawford, I'm leaving. I'm not drinking any Kim Crawford.
Take Kimmy down.
Yeah. A million cases of that wine. It's called recipe wine. They make it 4 different styles for different regions of the world. I don't know if you know that. It's owned by Constellation Burn. So sweeter for the Asian market. I mean,
Interesting.
and the problem with that is, not to diss them, but look, they sell a million cases of it, and they don't really take any care in it all. It's all made in a factory, really, and there's additives and centrifuges used. We could get into that, but and that's why I love the small producers and everything else. But the problem with that kind of winemaking, and this is what really pisses me off, because it is really a destroyer of the soul of wine, is it takes away vintage. If you're going to make it in a factory and you're going to do additives and everything, why put a year on the bottle?
Right.
You're just making Coca-Cola. Yeah.
Right, you absolutely are.
I agree.
And
So this wine I actually like. I do.
I think it's good. I wish we would just.
Now you're going to tell me it's a Charles Shaw, right?
There's no plonk in here, technically. Although number 1 now, we never know. So.
That's number 3.
Like I said, I'm gonna add a little. I don't know why there's a little bit of maybe amberization there. There's a little bit of age in this wine. I could be wrong.
So if this is the Bordeaux is the oldest wine in the pairing. It's 2011. So you could be right on the money.
God,
Yeah,
if
I think
that's
so.
the case, God, I could stop right here, because that would make me very happy. Because a lot of critics, I don't know if you know this, famous wine critics will not do blind tastings, because they're constantly outed. Oh my God, this is incredible, whatever. And said, yeah, that's a Pinot from Temecula. And then, oh, this is an incredible wine. Oh no, that's a Romanée Conti Latache.
Right.
And he said it was mediocre.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
know.
now your reputation, it just went down the toilet.
Yeah, that's why with critics, if it's not blind, and none of them blind, they're almost all paid now. I mean, these scores are miserable. I mean, it's tough. I mean, when you look at, you just don't know what's behind that score anymore.
Well, not only that, they might be scoring 150 wines in one afternoon.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I don't.
I mean, I don't really know how you can. These are generous pours, by the way. These are good 2.5, 3 ounce pours. So I'm getting 2, 3 real tastes. I don't think you can really truly evaluate a wine unless you've had about a third of the bottle. That's just my opinion.
Well, we could do that because there's only 3 of us.
Oh, that's right. I see. There's the bottles over there.
Yeah, we're still going to do them here. So.
Any other burning questions, Tina, or should we go to number 3?
Well, you've also written a book that's outside of the Sideways universe,
Yeah.
The Activist. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Should we do that 3 for 3 on that? Or
3,
how do we-
yeah.
while
As we're
doing
doing
that?
3, we'll be.
Because I think there's some stuff going on in that book.
So there is. So it's called The Archivist. And so my papers, the Rex Pickett papers, were taken by my alma mater, the University of California at San Diego. I'm very proud of this and very honored. And I was doing a faculty club dinner that was sold out, and I was giving my irreverent talk. And by the way, Sideways the play, which I wrote, was being staged at La Jolla Playhouse by the director of Jersey Boys, Des McAnuff, who's won 3 Tony Awards. And it broke all attendance records for non-musicals. So all this was happening. And so I'm at a faculty club dinner, and a woman comes up to me, and almost still brings tears to my eyes, to be honest, and I'm being genuine. Said, "Hi, I'm Kate, and I'm your archivist." I was like, "Oh my God!" And so I got to know her and go into her world in the library. A library, the Geisel Library, which is Theodore Geisel, which is Dr. Seuss. I've spent so many lonely years when I was going to school there at that library. Now the university is huge. And she took me into her world, and I wrote a tragic love story that morphs into a murder mystery. So it's a kind of a coming of age about a young project archivist who comes to the University of California, San Diego, to take over finishing up the papers, archiving the papers of a famous writer, more famous than me. I make it in the novel. And in the dark archives, because most stuff isn't on paper, it's actually out on these servers and stuff, and that got me into an interesting world. She finds an epistolary correspondence between her predecessor, who has supposedly drowned a year earlier, which is why she's coming as a project archivist, and the famous writer who's very married to someone very rich. And she finds an epistolary correspondence. And that now we go back a year to that story. I mean, I'll admit, it's 640 pages long, and Blackstone was very nervous about it because everybody reads 200-page books now, whatever. But I think it's really, it got me out of Sideways, it got me out of wine, and it's about a young project archivist who is really a coming-of-age story, almost like, imagine adult Nancy Drew. It really is kind of, that's what it is. I'm really proud of that novel. And,
it's a good book. I was disappointed in you, not staying faithful and all.
Oh no, but I've come back.
I know.
I've come back. I've come back to the and by the way, after Sideways New Zealand, which just came out a year ago, I signed with my publisher Blackstone, who's done such a wonderful job with my books, a post Sideways New Zealand trilogy. So 3 more Sideways. So there's Sideways 20, which is the next one, where Miles goes to the 20-year anniversary with the woman that his girlfriend who dumped him set him up with, who's being his assistant or whatever, but she's much more.
So he comes back to the States, he doesn't go back to New Zealand?
No, okay. He might. No, but now I'm giving something away here.
Yes.
The next book.
I thought it was true
reveal.
love in book 4. That's all I'm saying. But with Miles, you never know, because you basically just cut him. It's like, you know what I mean?
I know, but I have to, that's true. And people say, Miles proposes to Maya at the end of Chile, but that didn't work out. I have to go where I have to go. But the book after Sideways 20 is going to be, and you're hearing it here first, I've never said this in an interview, it's going to be Sideways Burgundy. And how he gets there, because bear in mind, Burgundy is the holy temple of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And I've gotten a chance, I can't go into it, to be able to experience these ultra expensive and hard to find wines. But because of a connection I have, I've been able to do that. And I've really fallen in love with those wines. And so Miles, he's got to go to Burgundy. Right?
Yes.
So that, you've heard it here first on Cork and Journey. I'm telling you. And he's definitely, and it's all set up beautifully in Sideways 20. So Sideways 20 is Miles going to the 20-year anniversary with a woman he's never met before. She's going to be his driver. So things happen.
Big reveal.
Yeah. Well,
Thank
I don't
you.
mind. You still have to tease it a little bit and get people to read it.
Well, you were going to do that pre-COVID, right?
Yeah.
You were heading over there to do.
Yeah. Well, it was originally announced as Sideways Burgundy, and then I was going to do another country because somebody said, "Don't go to Burgundy; it's too obvious." But I've since learned that that was bad advice. But I don't know. I just fell. I moved up here 8 months ago or whatever. And I love it up here. I love the small town village feel. LA can be very alienating. You can go months and not see a human being, even though there's 15 million people there, or have a social interaction. And here, all I have to do is walk over to the Vintners Collective, and I have wonderful conversations. I get
Plug.
Well, no, but I get a lot of love here, and I end up signing books and whatever. So what's not to like about it?
Well, they've been amazing. I mean, they're really good.
Yeah. Okay. All right, should we go into number 3?
Let's do 3.
I'm
Well, okay.
ahead of you guys.
I'm torn on 3. I like it, but it's definitely, I don't have the age too. I have that smoothness. Got a lot of tannins. This is the highest tannins, I think,
Yeah.
of any of them
I
we've
feel like
tasted.
that as well.
So let's talk about wine for a second. It's like a book or a movie. It's a 3-act structure. There's the introduction.
Go on, Maya.
And then there's the second act is really big. It's where things complicate and whatever. And then third act is resolution, whatever. Wine is the same way. It's got the front attack. You get into the mid palate, and that's where it's supposed to stretch out and spread its wings. And that's where it gets really thrilling. And then there's the finish, as they say. So it's and that's one thing I love about wine. And it really is analogous, and beer and distillates aren't. It's really analogous to what I do. It's a 3-act structure. To me, this falls apart in the second act. It's disjointed. Obviously I'm sipping and spitting here, but I don't.
I think it's hot.
I mean, the first wine didn't bother me. I just didn't think it was particularly interesting. The second wine I thought was really interesting. The third one I feel kind of a little bit angry with. I'll give it another chance.
Well, I think it's good. I'm going to have to give you a little splash, so you can kind of quickly revisit them all here at the end, kind of before we make our final decisions on this. To me, it feels like I like it. It's a little hot, though. Yeah. I'd say it's got the alcohol, probably the highest of anything we've had so far. I mean, it's definitely sticks with you at the end there.
The first time I drank red wine at, say, 62 degrees was in Chile, and I thought, God, all red wine should be drunk at 62 degrees, because, and actually we're probably sitting here at about mid-60s, so that's great. And actually when white wines are great, like white Burgundies, and not all of them, but most of them, you can drink them at 60, 62, and they taste thrilling, but you taste a supermarket Chardonnay at 65, and boy, it's going to taste like llama urine, so.
Something we've all had.
Right. But I know that this wine just feels, it's on the attack in the mid-palate. And you were right about the tannins. There's no question here. Am I wrong? Or is this the 82 Petrus?
No, we don't know. We don't know because we had them downstairs,
we didn't.
Put the
I didn't
bottles
bag
in.
these. I brought them in, had them uncork them, had them bag them, and bring them up.
Wow.
I do know what the wines are, but and it's interesting because oftentimes we'll go and do tastings, and we'll say, okay, we're going to get this one for later, and we'll look at it, and we'll get this one for later, right? You taste at the time, you said, that's interesting, we'll want to do a review on it. And sometimes it's the best thing the winery had, right? And you're like, okay, I want to give this a shot, because most of these small producers, they're hard-working people. They're farmers, they're making their wine, they're doing everything, and we really don't want to go out and just trash them mercilessly. It's kind of nice to say, well, this wine was, this is the best of the group, let's take a look at that and see if there's something special there, right? So some of these I think were put away, some of these have been put away for a while, right? So I'm kind of I think we're revisiting these for the first time in a while.
Yeah.
I find in general, the smaller producers, this is, I don't think this is, cut and dried, but usually they're doing, like, one of my favorite winery here is Ancien, Ken Bernard's. And he sources from, as far south as San Ynez Valley all the way up to Oregon, but also, right. Here. He uses basket presses, gravity flow. He is just, it's completely destemmed.
Native yeast, probably.
Yeah, right, exactly. And, so the smaller producers, they tend to be taking a real care. It's when you really start getting big, then they've got their supermarket wine and their other wines or whatever. So it's, generally I gravitate to the smaller, the lesser known, because wine, one of the beauties of it is discovery. It's discovering and whatever. And so regardless of there's no right or wrong here necessarily, and there's no well,
we could have something very wrong down the road, but we don't.
We could.
But it's interesting you bring that up because there's a bit of push lately, and I love California, but California over-regulates the heck out of stuff sometimes for me. But one of the things they're talking about doing, and I would love to see, and I'd love to see nationwide, is real truth in labeling on wine. Because you were talking earlier, Rex, about there's additives can be put in wine, and they're manufactured. But if you look at a wine, that what it should have in it is grapes, yeast, maybe some sulfite, always sulfites, I would hope. You don't have to, but it's not going to last very long. And then maybe they're going to have to put some acid in there, right? That's it. But there are 60 legal additives in the States. So you've got mega purple, people, all the things they can do. And if you could honestly just pull any bottle off a shelf, and if you could look at the ingredients on it, you would know right then and there whether it had a chance of being really good or not.
Yeah, well, you would know more. And of course, the wine industry has fought that for years.
Right.
I'm going to take it to even darker side. I went to Walla Walla, Washington to do an event, and that's Merlot country, actually, but they have other grapes there. It's more Bordeaux because it's hot on the other side of the Cascades. And I met a guy there who runs an enology program up there, And we started talking. He said, Rex, you'd be surprised how much manipulation there's going on, even with cult cabs. So what they'll do is, say Robert Parker gave a 98 to a wine. Suddenly your fortunes soared through the roof. They'll take that wine and have it analyzed and then try to replicate it as close as possible. And I thought, wow, that's incredible, because I agree with you. It just should be monks stomping grapes or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, the yeast is in the air. They didn't have to introduce yeast. I'm not against that. And of course, clones, and this is where things get really nerdy,
Especially
and
in
I
the
had
Pinot world.
Yeah, especially in the Pinot world. But you know, clones, you know, really happened as a result of you know, selective whatever, you know, DNA, blah blah blah. You know, that was happening just naturally.
Clonal selection is just a whole thing.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing.
Right.
But at the basis, it just should be grapes grown to a certain level of ripeness and whatever. But you know, money drives a lot of things, and even cult cabs, and I'm not going to name them, they use centrifuges to take out green pepper notes. They can put in other notes and try to recreate that screaming eagle.
Right.
Seriously, and they do, because there's money in it, you know.
Yeah.
So let's check out number 4.
4.
Okay.
All right. Moving on here.
Interesting.
I have to say, I admire your discipline in spitting over there, Rex.
Yes.
Number 4.
Well, I'm conflicted on this one. I might have to have a few more tastes of this. I mean, I first thought right off the front attack was barnyardy, and then it got in the middle, and it kind of opened up and
That's a
and
nice
started
fruit in the
getting.
middle.
It got. I don't know. It opened up. It became fruity, and this might be one of these Texas ones or something. I don't know. You know, where you never know what you're going to get down there. You
Don't
know.
know.
That is. What's funny, these are all 100% Merlot, with the exception of the Bordeaux, which is 80-20. So, and I think it's 80%. I don't know what the other 20 is. Not sure if it's Cab Franc or Cab.
I mean, it's really. I'm going to assume this is a domestic wine, but you know, it's definitely got. Definitely got some depth in the mid palate to me. You know, I'm going to say that. It's not my favorite of the 4, but it's right near of the 5 that we're going to have. I'm just going to put mid palate. Interesting.
I'd go number. It's probably my second favorite so far.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
say this and then this.
Without question, number 2 is so far
Yeah,
my
number
favorite.
2.
You know, and I could be totally wrong. I'm going to hear it's Charles Shaw, and I'm going to have to
We're gonna put
get Jamie, our camera person here to erase that. You know.
What's that?
I agree with number 2 so far, but
Yeah.
right now I'm like thinking number 3 is my second favorite.
Ah.
So we'll have to see if that changes.
So we are rapidly approaching the 20th anniversary of Sideways.
Yeah.
Some great stuff you've got going on.
Well, think about this. You know, I wrote the novel 25 years ago.
Was it so 5 years before it got made?
I told you, it took a while before Alexander Payne. It was actually greenlit in 2000, and then I get a call. It had been announced in the Hollywood Reporter and Daily Variety, which everybody reads in Hollywood. Artisan Entertainment goes sideways. Greenlit as a $10 million film. I was going from process servers knocking on my door, no joke, dead broke. You know, and I'll admit it, I got 3% of the budget. I didn't get any gross points, but we won't go into that. And I've made it. I came from nowhere. The 90s was a brutal decade, brutal.
Right.
And suddenly it's been announced. And then I get a call 2 months later after that article appeared. They still couldn't sell the novel though. I'm in the trades, you know. Alexander Payne calls me and said, Rex, I need a wine recommendation. Okay, great. You know, how's it going over there? Getting busy on that adaptation? Well, I was, except Jack Nicholson changed his mind about his fee, and I'm now going to make a film called About Schmidt. And I'm telling you, for anyone in the film business, Jamie over here would know this, you are now, and he had optioned Sideways, of course, but option money is nothing. It's when it goes into production. Or as I like to say, when the Panavisions come off the grip truck is when you make the money, you know. And I'm going, holy I'm going to wait 2.5 years. One phone call. I felt like, you know, you ever been walking down the street, like texting, and then you hit a lamppost?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
And it's such an offhanded mark, and he didn't mean it in any bad way. He was calling you for wine,
no,
right? A wine review.
Well, in Hollywood, when you're powerful, you have other projects orbiting. I mean, everyone. Yeah. It was, in fact, it was well known in the '80s or something to option a script, you know, to Robert Redford or something was the kiss of death because he had 40 projects and he was just waiting for all the stars to align. Mm-hmm. So yes, you can crow about that, but now your great screenplay could have been made by other people, but no, the studio's never going to take it away from Robert Redford back when he was famous or whatever, or whoever it was, you know. So it can be the kiss of death, you know. And Alexander obviously had other projects, and Jack Nicholson wanted a certain amount, and the film wasn't going to go through. So I'm going to make Sideways next, and it had been greenlit by Artisan Entertainment for $10 million of budget, which is a lot of money for a film. And but anyway, I waited 2.5 years. You don't know if the bloom is going to be off the rose. He's going to be off to other projects. But
so when did they start filming? Because October is 20.
October of 2003.
So it took 1 year from the time they started filming to release in the theaters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
But bear in mind, even though they shot it in 35 millimeter, they still edited in digital, and that's different. Our friend Jamie over here behind the camera.
By the way, that's Jamie behind the camera.
And
producer Jamie.
I think Jamie would even know about moviolas and Steenbecks, and my first feature film, I had no assistant editor. I was in the editing room for 2 years. For 2 years. But today, digital, you can see a rough cut the day you've literally have ended production, you know, that you've wrapped. Back in my day, it might have been 6 months before you saw a first kind of rough version of you, and they call it a rough cut or whatever. So that's the analog days. We won't get into that because we don't want to date ourselves. Yeah, no, but he kept re-upping the option, so that was hopeful.
Right.
There's another crazy story, but maybe I'll share that for another time. But
but here we are 20 years later. So I mean,
we are here 20 years later.
So I mean,
they shot it in 2003, and it was released in the fall of 2004.
Right, October, right?
October 22nd.
October 22nd. We're recording this on the 26th of September.
Yes.
So we're
very close.
A few weeks away from that.
And it's a big thing because, you know, think of how many films came out 20 years ago that you don't remember. Think how many novels you read that you don't remember. You know, to have, so forget the money and everything because people think I got rich and I didn't. Is, you know, it's the validation, the recognition that you did something that still resonates with people. And I meet them here at the Vintners Collective all the time. Right. I've seen your film 100 times, Rex. Oh, come on, you're joshing. No. When I need a comfort thing, I put on my DVD or whatever, blah, blah, blah. You know, very few films or novels or plays or whatever achieve that kind of lasting timelessness. And for whatever reason, I ask people why. Actually, I got a good answer from a woman. Because actually, I think I have more women fans for this film about two rudderless, kind of, you know, reckless guys or whatever. Because even Miles is kind of reckless, you know, in his own solipsistic way. And a woman said to me, "You know why women like your film, Rex?" I said, "Why?" She said, "Because they love seeing men so rudderless and so lost and clueless. They know they're going to come back to us for navigation and setting us." Are straight in life. And I thought, you know, what a great answer, because, you know, you lose perspective. You know, I wrote this novel, I just kind of wrote it and just burst out of me like a storm, seriously, but building, but then burst out of me. And I just went for the I just went for it. I mean, I didn't hold anything back. And the adaptation is very faithful to the novel. It's, you know, Miles in the movie as a school teacher. He's not in the novel. He's me living on the edge with process servers knocking on the door. So that's one difference. But other than that, I think, you know, one thing, Alexander hates it when I say this, but when I first finally met him, he said, you know, Rex, you know what I loved about your novel so much? I said, what? Your characters are so pathetic. Now, bear in mind, it's written in first person. So I thought, whoa, okay, you know, just make the movie, you know. I think he kind of saw them as that, but then as he got into the making of the film, he saw they had a little more heart and soul, you know. And when Des McAnuff read the play, he said, you know, Rex, I'm a huge fan of the movie, but the play is richer and more emotionally complex. So he said it's also funnier, you know, but they're different mediums. They're just different mediums. And Alexander Payne did a very faithful adaptation of my novel, as I've said in many interviews. In someone else's hands, could have been two guys doing Jello shots in Cabo San Lucas, and you take your money and you run.
Right.
You know, that's the fact. He shot in all the original locations. You know, that were in the book. He stayed really true to the characters. But I think you know, Jack has a little more heart and soul in the play and in the novel. In the movie, he's a little bit more of a doofus. A little bit. These are minor shadings, but you know, honestly, he still shows heart and soul. You know, I think a lot of women watching the movie or reading the book. I hope read the book. You know, yeah, Jack is wayward, but you know, his loyalty to Miles is something commendable. Yeah. And I think a lot of women relate. You know, I love his loyalty. I just need to change that other part. You know, which of course is a fantasy, but we won't go down that road.
Well, I think Jack's just a little more pathetic in the movie than he is in the book, too.
He is. Well, bear in mind, the play is a pure distillation of the novel. I wrote the play. I couldn't use anything from the movie that wasn't in the novel. You follow me?
Yes.
I could call Alexander and say, hey, can I use that? You know, where he goes, sure, I don't care. But I didn't. I didn't need to. So when you see Jack in the play or in the novel, yes, he does cheat on his fiancée. That happens. But he's got a little more depth. He's got a little more heart and soul, I think.
You know, it seems that in the movie, Jack's a little more one-dimensional than he is in the book, right? And I know it wasn't written that way, but I guess, you know, there were reasons for that. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, as I said, Alexander said to me, you know, I love about your novel so much. Your characters are so pathetic. And then I actually wrote that in an afterword to a publication of the screenplay, and he said, would you take that out because it makes me look bad? I said, but you said that. He goes, and so I took it out, you know. But I think he did see them as kind of pathetic, and so I think Jack's one-dimensionality comes from that a little bit, whereas in the novel and in the play, remember, the play is a pure distillation of my novel. And the play right now is a huge hit in Riga, Latvia, next to Russia. It's incredible. It was on a 2.5-hour national, 2.5-year national tour of Spain. And of course, La Jolla Playhouse.
Can we get it? So it wasn't La Jolla. That was pre-COVID, right?
Pre-COVID, that was 2013. Yeah. And it opened at a little 50-seat theater in Santa Monica by a total lark. How this happened, I won't go into the story. A little 50-seat theater, it was supposed to run 15 performances. It ran 100. We poured high-end Pinot, and most of it came from Sonoma. And Gary Farrell flew down and poured one night. I mean, he's like a mysterious, reclusive winemaker, you know, because they just wanted to honor it. And people came, they weren't theater goers. Probably they came because it was free wine, but I like to believe they came because it was a great play. But, you know, because it was sideways. Right. They weren't theater goers, but it was sideways. And it's a very faithful adaptation, some different things, some added value, whatever. And the women characters are bigger in the play than they are in the movie. Remember, Virginia Madsen only has 12 minutes in the movie. Her speech, and we could get into that story, is on wine, the life of wine and whatever, wasn't even in the first 3 drafts of the screenplay. So I told you that.
Is there anything like that in the book?
Yes, there is, but but Alexander wrote it, but I pushed him to write it. I said, Alexander, you can't have Miles go on and on about himself and Pinot and she says nothing. There has to be a complimentary speech. And in the 4th draft it came and tears came to my eyes. He shot it and he tried to cut it all the way to the end because he said it was too sentimental, it's going to date my movie. And then he screened it for Mike Nichols, the famous director, and who's Fred Virginia Woolf, The Graduate. And Mike Nichols said, your film doesn't begin until Maya's speech on wine. And he went, oh, I better put it in. But going back to Jack, when he comes back and, naked to the hotel, and he's, went off with the, the somewhat plus-sized woman, to be politically correct.
The waitress.
Yeah.
Yes.
Server. You really see him actually, not only is he naked, but he has been, he's been down-dressed in almost every way. He's been reduced.
Nose is broken. He's
right. I mean, he's been really reduced to nothing, and I love that, in some ways, because it makes him more human. But and when he starts to tell Miles what happened, Miles starts laughing, and it's the only time Paul Giamatti laughs. Miles laughs in the movie, and he laughs cathartically until Jack says, "We have to go back and get the rings," and then the laughter stops. He's like, "Holy shit, here we go again." When I was writing it, there was a little bit of Murphy's Law. Okay, I will not write a novel unless I know the ending. So that's number one.
Well, your ending's different than the movies. We should talk about
Yeah,
that.
we can talk about that too. We can talk about that. But I will not write until I have an ending, because the ending to me is the lodestar. It's where I'm going. I don't care how I get there. And then to me, it's like Murphy's Law. Everything that could go wrong will go wrong. In fact, I cut something from the novel ultimately before I showed it to my agent. And at one point, there's a detective that Jack's fiance has hired to follow them, and he has pictures of them in their hotel room, and he has to come, and they have to go back to Mom's and steal money to pay off the detective so he won't go to the ex. I thought, no, that's over the top. So I threw that out. But Jack is a little one-dimensional in the movie, and he's still fantastic. He's still funny as hell. He's still deluded and clueless.
Yeah.
But when Miles starts cathartically laughing, it's the first time the only time he laughs in the whole movie. But there are such poignant moments, like at the wedding when his ex-wife comes up and says she's pregnant. This all happened to me. I mean, you think, we made 2 films together, and she went on to the American Film Institute and made a short film that I wrote that won the Academy Award in 2000. So I'd like to say, oh yeah.
Congrats.
So I'd like to say I'm 2 for 2 on Oscars, because Sideways won for Best Adapted Screenplay. Unfortunately, they don't give me the Oscar, although my ex-wife gave it to me for 2 weeks, and it works wonders at tasting room. But it's, I don't know. There's something powerful about that moment, and I think when my ex-wife read it and she told me to burn it, it's because it was so personal, and it was almost too personal for her. In a way, and yet, honestly, if you want, here we are 20 years later, it's because I took those risks. I didn't boulderize myself.
Yeah.
I just left everything.
Oh no.
Everything in the kitchen sink. I threw it all in. I left nothing unexplored. I don't think, and yet I still brought it back to an emotional conclusion, because, as you know, the ending is different. So Alexander Payne was very generous. He did not have to show me the screenplay, contractually.
Really?
No, contractually he didn't have to show me the screenplay. No novelist, not even J.K. Rowling, probably gets to see the screenplay and have any input. Maybe she does, but nobody else does. Seriously, but he did. He wanted my input, and the film always ended. For those who know the film, it ended with it did end in the first 4 drafts of the screenplay with Miles getting a message on his answering machine some months later from Maya saying, "I read your novel, it's great," or whatever, "come visit me," and it goes to black.
Right.
In the novel and in the play, Maya shows up at the wedding, and they're not going to ride off into the sunset.
Right.
She's just saying, I have the capacity for forgiveness. And Alexander said to me when he first met me, "I can't do your ending, it's too Hollywood. In other words, it's too formulaic or something." I said, "Oh really? Okay, we'll just make the movie." So when he ended it on that answering machine thing and goes to black, I wrote a little note in the marginalia, which I did on every draft. And I said, "Well, why don't you just have a gunshot?" It must have rung true, because then he wrote in Miles driving up in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So now we know time has passed.
Yep.
And he knocks on the door. So there's hope. There's just that scintilla of hope. And I think he met me halfway. and that's collaboration, But had it ended just on that answering machine call, I don't think you have that moment of hope. It's a small moment, but it means a lot,
I think so.
I agree.
I think so, and I think your book ends better. I really do. I mean, I think when she shows up at the wedding, it's definitely.
It's funny, in the play, Miles is all alone on the stage. There's a scene with him and Jack, which is not in the movie, where they talk, and it's actually funny, but it's a goodbye scene, and then Miles is standing there all alone, and you think the lights are going to come down, and then Maya shows up in the corner in the spotlight on her. Tears come to people's eyes because they're not they know the movie, they don't know the book,
Right.
and it's like, oh my God. There is
The Hollywood ending we needed.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
but not totally. It's not like,
No.
Yes, I accept your marriage proposal or whatever bullshit. It's like, I have the capacity for forgiveness. I read your novel, and I think you do have a lot of promise, and there's something there, and we obviously have this wonderful connection over wine. We do have some things in common. We're both single. You're clearly not Jack.
Right.
I forgive you. Seriously, that's what it's about. All right, shall we go to wine number 5?
Yes,
Okay.
let's do it.
Yeah.
I am going to have to go back and taste all of them to formulate my final.
That is interesting. I am. What do we have here in number 5, guys?
In my opinion,
Dark horse has emerged.
uncomplex, cheap. Seriously, I don't think this wine really. This is my opinion. I'm a scathing critic.
As Miles would say, it's quaffable.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know. I think it's
You like it?
It's got high acid and alcohol. I don't know.
They're all good in their own right, and everybody has a different palate and how they experience the wine. So we're just, in our opinion, each of ours, putting it in order of 1 to 5, and then we'll just kind of add that together and see who.
Well, number 1, I still say bland. Sorry, just kind of, just lacking any kind of complexity. Not bad. It's not like it's vomitous or anything. But
1 and 5 are kind of off for me. Or not off. They were just okay. Good wine. Good wine. 2 and 3 are completely different. But
all right.
For me right now, number 2 was my number 1.
period.
Number 3 is my number 2.
We are in complete consensus on this one.
The number 2.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this to play ad hominem or ad feminine, not to use some fancy words on you. But seriously, number 2, I think just
Number 2 is the winner. I'm gonna.
Reveal.
Yeah, I gotta say. The Gabby Bordeaux 2011, as we said, had the age.
God, you
Had
know what?
everything.
And I wrote here, look at that, age.
Age. Yes.
And I mean, thank you. I saw a little bit of amberization,
Yeah.
but you know what? Let me just say this. So, I was fortunate. A gentleman came up to me. I did an event in Yountville, and he came up to me with a box, a wooden box. He said, "This is a 2001 Pinot Noir, and I paid $2,400 for it, and I will open it." Halleck Winery. I will open it if you will drink it with the owner, who's a friend of mine. I said, done. So drove with joy over to Sebastopol. He opened this 2001 that won every award that a Pinot Noir could win. It was his second vintage, and he only has 2 acres. But it was done by, the winemaker was Ken LaFollette, so he's the owner, and he was the winemaker at Flowers, which is a famous winery, you know. And it was dead, and we all admitted it. It had amberization, but I tasted it. So wine doesn't always go the distance, even if it's made to go the distance.
Right.
And I think this wine, it is, I'm so happy. I don't even care if I'm wrong about all the others, that this was an aged, so this is 13 years.
Yeah.
It is clearly not oxidized. It is not materized.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful wine.
Yeah.
It is.
And we all called it, all 3 of us.
did, yep.
So, you know, that's a rare thing. And I just,
Feel good.
Well, you
So
know,
we'll put
wines,
number 1 here.
you know, Tina, Brett, wines don't really, they don't go the distance as much as people say they do.
We're going to put number 1 here as we reveal.
Okay.
Wow. All right.
So that's our first
I'm
one.
going to take that bottle with me, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
You got
of
half a bottle
course.
left. That's a beauty. But I'll tell you about the funny thing about that wine is we were in Sedona, right?
I don't know. What are you
Yeah,
going to
no,
say?
that's where we got the wine.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, well,
didn't
we
know
were in
what you were
Sedona, and let me tell you.
I mean, Brett, what, so you bought this in Sedona,
We'll go to this little.
but do you know anything about Chateau Gabi?
No, go into this crazy little. So every time we go to a city, we're like, "What's the best wine tasting room? What's going on? We got to go review it, check it out, see what they got." And there in Middle Sedona was one of the best wine tasting rooms I've ever seen.
Wow.
They did a beautiful flight, and they put the bottles there, and they go through, and we tasted this, and we were like, "That's crazy." And she says, "Yeah,
So
the owner
good.
was over in France, and he bought up every last bit of it, and so you can get this in Sedona at this one little wine shop because he got it all."
Of these 5, it clearly just stood out as having, you could taste the age, you know, as for those who are new to wine, whatever, when you taste young Cabernet Sauvignons or Merlot blends or whatever, Bordeaux blends, they're heavy in tannins. So think of like a handful of walnuts or aspirin in your mouth, whatever. But those tannins are meant to fall off, and the wine evolves and comes through at age 7, 8, 9. But sometimes after 10, 12 years, all you taste are tannins. The fruit didn't evolve.
It's gone.
And it's just completely dead or whatever.
Or the tannins fall out.
And if you,
There's nothing there.
or the tannins fall
Right,
out,
right.
whatever. And you're absolutely right, Brett. You guys really know your wine. And I think this is, God, for 50, I mean,
It's
if
a
you
bargain.
told me it was 500 or something, I'd say, well, I don't know. But I had a 2015 Rioja that just had gone to the velvet and silk. That was also about 50 or 60, a Vigna Adanza or something like that. God, it had a richness. And this is when aged wine, I've had some aged white Burgundies that go to the honey.
Yeah.
And they're so wonderful.
That
And
can happen
we've
too.
got to do that in our next video.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do Chardonnay, literally Sonoma Chardonnay and white Burgundy.
And some Chablis.
And Chablis,
Yeah.
which is of course Burgundy, and
Well, yeah, but I mean,
but
Chablis.
it's Chardonnay.
Yes,
And,
they're all Chardonnays, correct.
And I think these could be really fun and informative. I mean, because we're just amateurs,
We are.
It's just art, whatever. But
our perception.
But you know what? I'm excited because we nailed this.
Yes, we did.
We did. Boom.
So,
And so is this a Merlot Miles could get behind? Hey,
Honestly, it is because it really honestly.
It's got depth. It's 3-dimensional.
It's 3-dimensional. The wine has evolved in a way. They obviously made it with, it wasn't mechanized, farmed.
Right.
They made it with some care and some love and whatever. And when you do that with Merlot, I'm not going to say it's going to reach the heights of the great Bourgogne Rouges or whatever, because now you go into a different land of mystery. The thing that people have to understand about Merlot, and I know I explained how it happened in the movie and whatever, so we don't have to go down the French paradox thing. But Pinot Noir and Merlot are just 2 very different grapes. One is a hot weather grape, One is a cool weather grape. So they're just very different grapes.
They go with different foods. They're different all the way around. It's like saying I like a Sprite or a Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, I feel like there's that big a, when you get to these things, right? I mean, because
I don't like either.
well, I mean,
Okay. I don't drink industrial waste.
Pinot is its own. Pinot is its own thing.
It is.
I mean, it really is. Of
Real-
all the grapes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because when I fell in love with Pinot after I got divorced and could explore other wines besides Sauvignon Blanc, I wrote, God, this is unbelievable. And then I found one of the wines that Miles waxes on about is the Sanford La Rinconada single vineyard. I found it was 25% Syrah.
Really?
I went, holy, I'm making, and Sanford, to bolster up Pinot that doesn't, because in California, for those of you who don't know, it's a 75% law. So if it's 75% that grape, you can just call it Pinot Noir. But the other 25% can be water.
Right.
It could be Riesling. It could be, ask Joe Wagner or whatever. They put, Bruno D'Afonso is a winemaker. He's a great winemaker. But he put 25% Syrah in that, and he gave it shoulders. But I was new to Pinot, and so to me it tasted big and rich and whatever. But when you start,
But that's fine.
It's fine.
I mean, that's great. I mean,
But in Burgundy, he would be in shackles.
Yes.
Under AOC law, it's 100% Pinot Noir. Otherwise, we're putting you in leg irons.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
And by the way, this is the Gabby, to talk about blending.
Wow.
This is the only one
Wow.
that's not 100% Merlot. It is 80% Merlot, and then the rest is Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc. So it's got that mix, and that can make all the difference.
Yeah,
in the
I
world.
think it adds a little spiciness.
Yep.
And it adds a little bit more I put density, richness, and so that again, I don't want to toot my own horn here because I'm no sommelier. I'm just a writer. I'm just an artist or whatever. I'm a divorcee.
That loves his Pinot.
But we call this.
Yeah.
I'm proud of us.
All right, let's go to our number
Yes.
2.
Number 2.
So for me, running through the lineup, a little switcheroo. My number 2 is number 3.
My number 2 is number 3.
Really? And I was number 4, but I'm.
For your number 2, I've had it as mine from the beginning.
But there's something about. I know, but I'm kind of vacillating between these two. I'm going to go with number 3, and number 4 is my number.
Yeah, to me, number 3 is.
What's your number 2?
My number 2 is number 4. Number 3 is still. It's disjointed in the mid palate. It's harsh. It feels like a kind of more commercially made Merlot. Just my opinion. I could be totally wrong.
I think they're both very, very good. I'm 1 point apart, so
Okay.
I actually rated all these on the 100-point scale. I just went 1 point apart on these.
Well, for Parker to give 92 to the Gabby,
Yeah.
I frankly, if I was doing that point scale, I'd give it a 93, 94. Honestly.
So Rex, you're number 2, which you like. You'd say it's good, very good. This number 4.
Number 4, yeah.
Well, how do you think? A good wine? You like it?
I said mid palate, interesting. Yeah.
All right. French by way of Texas.
Wow.
This is the Calais La Cuvée Rousseau. There's 100% Merlot, Texas High Plains, 2020. The winemaker's name is actually Calais, which is crazy.
I feel even better.
You got 2 French guys making your Merlots.
What is I hate to say this, hate to bring up the obvious, but what does he sell this for a bottle?
Oh, I've got notes on it. I prepared notes. Oh, at this point I'll just throw them out. I've got them for you. Everybody can look at them. The only one I don't have is there's a 5th bottle in here, and I don't know where it's going to come out in this mix. But I'll tell you the funny story about that.
That's funny that oh my God. So was number 3 the Frog's Leap?
We don't know.
We don't know yet.
We're going to get there. There's a 5th wine in this mix that is not on this list.
So the Rousseau is still 66 a bottle.
That was 66 a bottle.
And honestly, So that's number 4, right?
That
Okay.
that was your number 2 out of this?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
I really, even though it costs a little bit more than the Gabby, it doesn't, these are grown in totally different terroirs, totally different soils. And
Yep.
bear in mind, in Bordeaux, well, in Burgundy, they've been making wine for a millennium.
Yep.
In Bordeaux, they've only been making wine for 300 years. But still, bear in mind, with wine, you learn every year, and you have to wait a year or a year and a half if it's going to be in barrel to decide we're going to make this adjustment. We're going to use a little more neutral oak, or we're going to maybe de-stem a little more, or whatever. They have to wait a year and a half, and that's one of the wonderful things about wine.
There it is.
It's exciting.
Well, and the other thing is,
Yeah.
we could taste, there could be a wine here that you're like, no. And then with that same bottle of wine 5 years from now, you'd be like, mind blown.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is,
Yeah.
hey, I don't know what happened in the bottle, but magic is always happening.
If we have five years.
As Maya says, wine is alive. All right. So there you go. All right. So our number 2 was number 3.
I'm telling you, number 4 so is the Rousseau, right?
It's
I don't
Yeah.
know
No. Number. It's a.
No,
it's.
that-
It's. It's. It,
It's
There it
the
is.
Texas one.
it's the Texas Calais.
Right, but
Yes,
I'm looking
the
at
Rousseau,
here.
The
That
Rousseau.
was the number 4 on here, right?
Yep,
That's
yep.
one I thought was really, I said mid-palate interesting, and I really did. I think it had the complexity of 2. Of course, now we know 2 is a 13-year-old wine, so
But still, shout out to Texas, huh?
Yes.
Seriously, yeah.
I mean,
shout
Texas
out
High
to
Plains.
That, he deserves to get 66 a bottle for it. He won't be getting it from me, but no, I'm kidding you. No, seriously, have I become a Merlot, a Pinot apostate? And suddenly I'm going to start, sipping and spitting Merlots. No, actually, 2 and 4 for me. Boy, I'm so happy that that this kind of just sort of all sorted out this way.
It was fun.
Good.
It's
Yes.
fun.
It's been fun, and you guys are really great. And I think this is actually, I've done different tastings and different events, and blah 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 sideways. This has been one of the most fun events.
Oh,
Honestly, I thought, okay, they don't know.
Thank
I just
you.
met these people. They don't know what they're doing. They're starting this new thing. They've been over to Texas, and who knows? They're a bunch of weirdos, and I'm gonna have to cut, ties. No, I'm kidding you. No, seriously, this has been one of the most fun things I've done, and I've learned something, and I'm trusting my palate.
Good.
good. Yes.
And
there
that
you
we
go.
all agreed on too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't that awesome?
It is.
So Tina
Okay.
and I say number 2, which is just a point below where you were, is the number 3,
Okay.
and it is
Oh.
2021 Matthias.
Thiasin.
So let me tell you, that's not on your list. Do you know
Okay.
why that's not on your list? And I'm actually, that came up. I'm happy that was our number 2.
Because you bought it at the bottle barn.
No. We were talking to Steve Matthiasen. We actually did an interview with him, Matthiasen Wineries.
Yeah.
He's just down the road. He's winemaker of the year several times by multiple plays. Just an amazing guy. 10,000. If you don't know Matthiasen, check him out. Anyway, we're
They're
interviewing him,
amazing.
and we're telling him.
All right, let me revisit it. See, now this is
Revisit.
the neurochemistry.
Yes.
Now I know it's Matthiasen, and so now so he was number 3, right?
He's
Yes.
the number 3. But here's what he said. So we were telling him, he goes, so what are you guys doing? I go, well, we're going to go hang out with Rex Pickett, and we're going to do a blind tasting of Merlot. And his face went,
Blank.
He went angry. It went
Not
it
really,
went tough.
but
It went tough.
no.
Steve, when you're watching this, we can
Bear in
corroborate.
mind,
Yeah.
I hope you told him, Steve.
No, I did.
Oh, wait.
Hang on, wait.
Rex didn't do the screenplay. There were many lines of dialogue that didn't make it into the
So-
movie.
We did.
So
we did.
Steve says,
And by the way, I'm not as angry as Paul Giamatti about Merlot. So I'm not, I also wasn't directing him to be so angry. I'm not the director of the movie, okay?
He knows that.
Just
He knows
FYI.
that, yeah.
so
Yes,
finishing the story, so Steve
Okay.
goes, when Jill is his wife, they worked together. When Jill and I were starting out, we made one wine. We had one wine in 2003 we put out. And I go, it was a Merlot? He goes, it was a Merlot. And he goes, that movie almost killed me. I go, well, Rex doesn't really feel that way necessarily. And then he goes, all right, hang on. I want to put one of my wines into this. And he actually went in, grabbed a Merlot, gave it to us, and said, put it in the blind tasting so it's not on
Yeah.
the list
You know what?
here. So
It's really...
cheers to Steve.
Yes.
Here you go.
So,
Cheers.
even though I said, I'm sorry, Steve, that
Very
I said
good Merlot.
disjointed in the mid palate, it's tannic, which, I get from a lot of Cabernets in Napa. They have them down here, Vintners Collective and whatever. And when I get that really, what year is it?
2021.
Yeah,
So
was a great year, by the way.
Oh, beautiful.
And so here's the thing about Matheson. So, and this is going to affirm one of the things that you said earlier, and I don't mean to dominate the conversation.
No, you're good. You're the
Is
host guest.
you said some of these wines, if we just waited 5 years, whatever. This is one I said disjointed because it was so tannic in the mid palate to me.
Wow.
But I think Matheson's wines, that wine in 5 years, if you lay it down, and no one does. By the way, 98% of all wine is drunk within 48 hours of purchase. Did you know this?
Yes,
And
I've read that.
so they're making the wine for those people, and that's unfortunate. And I think Matheson, he got a bad rap from me,
Mathiasen, yeah.
Mathiasen. Steve, I want to apologize because I think in 5 years this wine is going to just actually just effloresce beautifully. But right now it feels tannic in the mid palate to me.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit, but I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Then,
it
we're
is.
all
It
there.
is.
And
Yeah.
for me, I thought that was like definitely my second choice, and I didn't even change it.
And we kind of
into
agree that
the
1 and
thing.
5 are toss-up.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're just 5 is just a joke,
So 5's a joke.
Yeah, five
I wasn't
has
a
got to
fan
be
of
Temecula
either.
or something.
Let's say 5 is. Oh, Frog's Leap.
Oh,
Well, the thing
Well-
is, Frog's Leap was a
Well, this is the William Rossi, the special selection. This is $80 a bottle. And
it's not worth.
the soil selection, but it's a 2018, which was, it was what it was.
It was a difficult year.
Yeah.
It's so funny though, when if Tina and I bought that, because we only buy wines we taste, because we travel around so much, right? So we only buy wines we taste. When we tasted it, we thought,
out of what they had, that was good.
and I probably had stand alone. You're right, the little bit. And so, what a what a shock though. Temecula comes out last.
Is Temecula number 1?
That was unfortunately number 1.
And I said bland. I mean,
Carter's
bland.
State. That's the
and
2014, by the
and
way.
Frog's Leap, they actually were a good winery, but they got really big, and I don't doubt they mechanized farm it. I think.
I don't know.
We don't know.
We don't
We have
know.
no idea.
we don't want to alienate
No
anybody
way.
here.
But I must say, for Temecula wines, this wine is good. This wine is very good.
But they do charge $58 for this. Because that's it's a 2014. They age it
But
17
that's kinda like-
months. But like it.
That's kind of like saying, for $3, $2 up, Chuck, which is what I call it.
Yep.
You know what? It doesn't taste like lighter fluid.
No.
No.
And in fact, actually, right now, by the way, this year, there's a surplus of grapes and they can't even sell them. Literally.
That's a
They're,
problem.
they're selling them for like pennies on the dollars, and no one will take them because remember, it costs money to make the wine. And they literally cannot sell it. And they're wanting to pull out acreage. And the same in France, too, is happening. But
By the way, hang on. And if you go to This Week Uncorked over at Cork and Journey, you get the news that happens in the wine industry every week, and you would know what Rex is telling you right now because we cover it on a weekly basis.
yeah, we are. We're going to keep doing this. This is going to be. This is going to be a great channel. I mean, especially
Thank you.
continuing to do these tastings. I mean, can you imagine a white Burgundy Chardonnay tasting, a face-off between Sonoma and white Burgundy? And by the way, I can help you with the white Burgundies and getting them because of my partner. I don't want to get into that.
Let's do that.
Yes, we can definitely do that.
Rex, absolute pleasure, my friend. As always,
Thank you, Rex.
Tremendous talking to you today. Everybody, stop by Cork and Journey. Thank you so much for visiting us on this video today. And if you want to, please head over to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media. Thank you again for...
And also go to rexpickettbooks.com.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if you buy from Amazon, I make nothing.
Yeah.
You keep me in poverty. But if you buy from me, I actually, make a living.
And you'll personally sign books.
I will personally sign and inscribe those
And
books.
use the code CORK10 to get 10% off your order.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Please do head over to rexpickettbooks.com. Dan, Rex, always a pleasure.
Yes,
Love
this
talking
is
to you.
amazing.
Just
Thank you so much,
again,
Brett,
thanks, my
Tina.
friend.
Thank
What a
you.
great partnership
All
this
right,
is
guys.
going to be.
All right. Take care, everybody. Cheers.